going to be sunny and hot today with a high of 94 degrees, so make sure you're staying cool. As we head into the evening, partly cloudy skies with a low dropping to 70 before we head into Thursday, where we have chances for rain. This is your weather update from the WSIC News Weather Center.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
All Things Saine. Representative Saine.
It's 11:06 on WSIC News Radio, and you're listening to All Things Saine. If you'd like to be part of the show, 844 Studio 4. We are streaming live on the WSIC News Facebook page, on Twitter, on X. Sorry,
yeah, it's X now.
It's X now. YouTube, and of course LinkedIn. And Representative Saine not here today. He is traveling, doing some leadership business today. So I'm your host, David Coble, filling in today, and along with Larry Shaheen, attorney extraordinaire.
Always
here
a pleasure.
in the Huntersville Cornelius.
Oh,
Larry,
you're being way too kind to me there, dude.
Well, actually, I'm getting ready to fix it because I do have a little bit of a bone to pick with you.
Oh, good.
All right. So many people may not know you have recently been enshrined, if you will, as a trustee of the greatest university in our UNC system, the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, my alma mater. But on several of your profiles, all I see is Carolina and South Carolina.
Oh no, I've changed everything.
Okay, I don't think
Everything's
you have,
changed.
because our Bill, our engineer extraordinaire, I believe, found an instance of things that had not been changed. So
they're going to have to tell me before I leave. I made sure to change as much as I could. I think there's one picture on Twitter of me trying to take a photo of a gator at Kiowa, but other than that,
okay.
I think there's everything all UNC Charlotte at this point.
All right. I'm just making sure, because now that you are responsible for the direction and the leadership
Oh God,
of
that's
my great
scary.
state
The way
university.
you say that just makes it sound scary.
I have all the faith in the world.
Chancellor Gaber, I promise if you're listening, we're not going to say anything crazy today.
Yeah, having the fact that she knows both of us, I'm not sure that's really going to pass.
That's not going to make her feel bad. That's not going to make her feel
But
bad.
Larry, no, it's great to have you back. Last time you were on, we actually were filling in for Senator Vicky Sawyer.
Yep.
Now filling in for Representative Saine. And obviously, we are, fingers crossed, hopefully approaching the end of the budget cycle.
Yes.
I know that there has been a lot of work that's been going on over the course of the last several weeks. We appear, by all indications, that next week is still the target for a vote, based off the comments coming from the Speaker and the Senator Phil Berger. But from an overall budget standpoint, where do you feel like we're at? What are you hearing, and sort of what should we look at?
I think we're there. And ultimately what we're seeing is just now some of these last minute things that are going to kind of go through. So I think there were some bills yesterday that got pulled. One was an occupancy tax issue that wasn't quite ready for the floor. They're going to bring that back with a change to it, from my understanding, and then go forward on that one. There's also the issue on the elections bill that's going to be dealt with. There's a permitting reform bill that's sitting in the Senate that I think is going to probably move forward. But regards to the budget, the goal, I think, is to take votes on the 13th and 14th of next week. So there should be a budget passed into Cooper by then. Now, process after that. They pass it, get it to him. He has 10 days. So it'll be 10 days. He'll either veto it first day, send it back, or he's going to then let it pass into law, which I don't think he's going to. I think he's going to take the entire 10 days, message against it, then veto it, then send it back and make them
Even
override.
with Medicaid expansion, you think he vetoes
Even
it?
with Medicaid expansion, here's why. He's not going to like the tax package. He's just not going to buy into the tax package, because the tax package, as you and I both know, is contingent on a couple of different things, which includes some things that are a little bit more controversial. So the finalization of that tax package is probably going to include some caps. So where if you don't hit revenue numbers, then you're not going to see the reduction. But even so, that's still a lot further than I know that Governor Cooper wants it to be. Now, let's be clear. If he had signed the budgets over the last 6 years, teachers would have a significant raise from where they are right now. But he chose not to do that, like a intransigent dork that he is. So ultimately, and I don't care at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, UNC Charlotte, you're going to hear some hard truths about your governor, and it's just going to be the way it is. But to a certain extent, the situation continues to be the way that before Speaker Moore, then Speaker Tillis, and Senate Pro Tem President Berger has just been so genius in how they're negotiating this, is that by allowing a continuing resolution to fund the state at the level that it was funded the year before, we've never had the briefsmanship that's happened at the federal government, ever.
Thank goodness.
And it has made a huge amount of difference because we've been able to show and prove that you can run the state on a conservative fashion and continue to do all the things we need to do. And even when we didn't have a budget for almost 2.5 years, we were still one of the number one places to do business in the country. So for those who say we need more and more government, I don't buy it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm interested in your perspective on this, right? Because I think, sort of the last key, and there's been a lot of stuff in the news about casinos and things like that. I know that there's a portion of that, that feeds into the revenue. I'm not sure that gets done this time around. It depends on who you talk to. But there was a lot of, and we talked about this on Senator Sarr show a couple of weeks ago about a number of these counties that had, been rumored to be the targets of,
Right.
Of housing these. A lot of them don't want them.
No, I mean,
that
it's
have no
amazing.
interest
We
in
had
having
people
them.
up there protesting yesterday. That was crazy. You had a whole crew from Rockingham County just
Really?
roll up there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's a fair amount of economic development. No
It's
doubt.
It's
that
a
comes with these
no-brainer
things.
economic development project, but it's got its folks that are not so in favor of it, and unfortunately, it's turned into a campaign issue when you see former Congressman Mark Walker. God
and
bless him.
former Rep Andy Wells has made it part of his.
Andy
now.
Wells is out there now campaigning against it. It's gotten to be a tough issue.
Yeah.
And I don't envy those in the decision-making process that they've got to be able to try, and if that's something that they're trying to get done, that's going to be a tough needle to thread.
Well, especially going into a Republican primary.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
I mean, right, wrong. I mean, as a broader population,
Well, filing's
of the
in
whole,
December.
right?
We're
Filing is
4
December.
months. We're 3 months away from filing. I mean, when you think about it, because you've got all of September, all of October, all of November. Filing's immediately starting in December. So there's not going to be any time for there to be any dissipation of any anger for anything that's been done at the budget, for folks to be able to come out and say, nope, okay, I'm done. We're going to go file against this because of this issue that's made us angry. That's the cost of delaying these things into later in the year, is that they ultimately wind up becoming closer and closer to the filing deadline where you don't have that time for people to cool off.
Right, exactly. And I think one of the interesting things about this, and I'm interested in your perspective on this,
Mm-hmm.
you are obviously someone who has spent a lot of time inside of North Carolina politics, inside of Mecklenburg County politics, Charlotte region politics. And so from obviously, you're more than likely, we're never going to see your name on a ballot.
No.
Because we would have talked about this
I
before.
moved downtown on purpose. I
Exactly.
live right off Trade Street so that I can't run. That was
so that
done
you
on
can't
purpose.
run. But I do. So obviously, this latest tax package, and obviously the governor will have a problem, like you said, with the tax package with the cutting taxes again. Philosophically, we right now, for all intents and purposes, North Carolina, number one state to do business. Record revenue still coming in. Rainy day fund in the billions. We're able to pretty much fund and do a lot of stuff with the current tax sort of structure that we have. In your mind, is there a point where, because remember, as you said, taxes are the price we pay for living in a civilized government or civilized society. So at what point is it like, you know what, we're good? We have a tax package that is low. It has made us advantageous for business. We are bringing in revenue, but we still have government obligations that have to be funded: teachers, roads, infrastructure. Yeah. At what point in time in your mind, is it, okay, we're probably hit a good point now?
I don't think we're ever going to hit that point from an income tax perspective. And we can come back to this on a tax theory idea. When you look at places like Tennessee, Texas, Florida, South Carolina, places that do not have income taxes, right, for individuals, it makes a huge difference. And the reason that it makes a huge difference is because it's something for retirees. It's something for individuals. We can shift to a consumption-based model that's stable and still find ways to make it work. South Carolina makes up for it with increased property taxes. Tennessee makes up for it with more sales taxes. Texas makes up for it, increased property taxes. Florida does sales taxes. There's all these kinds of ways to get there. I think that an income tax doesn't necessarily help us. We've got to look at ways to modernize the tax code, especially in fuel taxes for our transportation needs.
100%. You're listening to All Things Saine here on WSIC News. We will be right back.
More of All Things Saine with NC Representative Jason Saine is coming up on the new 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Here's your WSIC community calendar. Looking for a night of laughs? This Saturday, Mike Goodwin, who's been on America's Got Talent, is coming to Kane Center for the Arts in Cornelius. Kane Center for the Arts' 2024 fall season, comedian Mike Goodwin. This Saturday, September 9th. For more info, visit kanearts.org. The Iredell County Agricultural Fair is going on right now. For $5 until September 9th, enjoy thrills and yummy treats going on at the Iredell County Fairgrounds in Troutman. The Iredell County Agricultural Fair runs through this Saturday. Apple picking at Kerrigan Farms is here. The apple picking at Kerrigan Farms is a very short window. Apple picking will end September 30th. Only in September. Book your experience now at kerriganfarms.com. The Full Bloom Film Festival is happening this week, September 7th, 8th, and 9th in Statesville. Happening on Meeting Street in downtown Statesville, the Full Bloom Film Festival features diverse quality cinema. Where I Belong, the documentary about the life of Statesville's own Rocky Lynn, will play twice. For more info, visit fullbloomfilmfestival.org. Lost Worlds Brewing is hosting their 3rd annual Harvest Market. Celebrate autumn on Sunday during the Harvest Market with tasty beer, food, and live music. This is happening at Lost Worlds Brewing in Cornelius. Harvest Market is from 11 a.m. until 4 p.m. Sunday at Lost Worlds Brewing. For more info, visit lostworldsbeer.com. Have an event you would like to tell people about? Yard sales, estate sales, and everything in between? Visit WSICnews.com and click on events to submit your event today.
This is your weather update from the WSIC News Weather Center. It's going to be sunny and hot today with a high of 94 degrees, so make sure you're staying cool. As we head into the evening, partly cloudy skies with a low dropping to 70 before we head into Thursday, where we have chances for rain. This is your weather update from the WSIC News Weather Center.
Breaking news, expert analysis, and the stories that matter most, all in one place.
I totally acknowledge seeing flames is a scary situation.
WSIC News Talk Now.
Hate you can't see.
Hate you
Larry
can't see, it's just
Shaheen
kinda-
over here jamming. You're welcome back to All Things
Did you see
Saine.
the meme? So apparently they've created this technology in a Mercedes where if you're stuck in sand or mud, the Mercedes will bounce and you can bring it back and forth to get it out of stuck mud or sand.
Really?
But of course, that's not what people are using it for. They're just bouncing the Mercedes.
That's what I would use
there.
it for.
I'm just sitting there thinking we're bouncing around in the Mercedes.
Well,
with
and
the intro music.
how often do you see people off-roading in their Mercedes? I mean, that seems
Yes.
like, but
If you're off-roading in a Mercedes, you're doing something a little bit wrong. You've
are.
got more money than you know what to do with.
True story. Welcome back to All Things Saine on WSIC News Radio. This is your host, David Coble, along with Larry Shaheen, filling in for Representative Jason Saine today. If you'd like to be part of our show, 844-STUDIO-4, are still streaming live on the WSIC News Facebook page, YouTube, Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter. I'll get that right eventually, and LinkedIn. But leading into from the hip-hop music, obviously that is the appropriate way to lead into additional conversation about taxes.
Oh, yeah.
And tax theory.
Yeah.
But before the break, we were sort of talking about is there a right threshold? And again, I was posing the question. I'm definitely not a supporter of higher income taxes, to be sure. But I was posing the question, Larry, to you sort of about taxes from a budgetary standpoint, and then obviously, a way when we were talking through the break to, a way to incentivize business. So pick up where you left off and sort of fill out that.
And it's important to talk about what's gone on since 2011, because when the Republicans took over in 2010 and when they got the majority in 2011, they did not do what happened in Kansas. It's important to talk about places like Kansas. There they cut taxes, but they did not cut spending. Okay, so what happened? You had a massive hole in the budget, right, that they had to go fill. That created a problem. Kansas now has a Democratic governor. It did not go the way they wanted it to. North Carolina has a Democratic governor, but that's only because of a lot of different things that have absolutely nothing to do with policy. That has a lot to do with the way the governor then at the time happened, a lot of other things. But North Carolina should have a Republican governor, just period. But when you look at the legislature, Kansas's legislature took a significant amount of hits because they did not cut spending while cutting taxes. North Carolina did. North Carolina significantly cut spending in 2011, 2013, but they had to because they had no choice. They had a big deficit that they had to make up for. So by doing so, it enabled them to be able to actually grow the pie by incentivizing business activity. What a surprise. you're working through the tax code to incentivize business activity. You're actually growing the pie. And the funny thing is that all these people who say, well, trickle-down economics doesn't work, come to North Carolina and tell me that that doesn't work. That's nonsense. And not only that, when you look at what the tax code has done, you want to talk about the renewable portfolio standard. Okay, let's just talk there. That's a dirty word in the energy business, but the renewable portfolio standard forced energy companies through their finance policy and through their regulatory policy to have to invest in certain renewable projects. Those projects were then given a tax incentive. Okay, made them more profitable. So what did Duke have to go do? Duke had to go buy all these solar farms. And who got rich on that? Nothing but a bunch of liberals. Nothing but a bunch of Democrat liberals, one of whom ran for Congress, Dan McCready. And the thing is that Republicans need to be thinking about tax policy in the exact same way. We have got to start thinking, what industries of our country do we want to be here? Like, they've done some stuff for VinFast, clean energy, great. They've done some stuff for battery technology, Toyota, absolutely. What's next? What industries do we want to lead in? We can have a semiconductor chip facility in North Carolina, but we have to really, really want it. Wolfspeed is doing it, right? But you want to be that thing. What don't we have that other states have? A major manufacturing facility that is seriously a manufacturing facility. Like, we don't have a Mercedes. We don't have a BMW. We don't have a Hyundai. Any of these major manufacturers. And Toyota might as well be an American company at this point for all the American individuals that it employs. And it does a fantastic job. VinFast, I don't know if their market capitalization number is going to hold up, but we've incentivized that activity, and they've come here. So what's next? Well, we know that we've got an issue in terms of inner city issues where lots of buildings that do not have housing. There's no housing in some of these places that's affordable. We also know in Charlotte alone, we have 100 vacant floors in B and C product. But it's not just in Charlotte that vacant buildings are an issue. Go to Statesville, go to Mooresville, go to all these older buildings. What's the incentive to go in and refit them when you're not going to be able to recover that money for 30 or 40 years? Unfortunately, we've gone to an economy that wants to think about 1 to 5 to 10 year returns. So how do you get people to invest in our older cities and in downtown areas? Well, it's real simple. You use the tax code. We need to start thinking about ways to incentivize adaptive reuse. We need to be able to come in, take an old mill, take an old building, find a way to write off the cost of the adaptive reuse, of the actual cost, and then come in and say, if you're doing affordable, say, for example, you do an 80% AMI affordability component within that housing, you get a property tax break for 10 years. As long as you put it in the deed that for this amount of time, it's going to be this much affordable. Doesn't necessarily matter, but you got to get it in there. So then you're incentivizing it through the tax policy instead of coming back and saying, here, like what Charlotte does, they'll just give you cash, developer, so that you can bridge the gap between the profitability number that you need and the number that it actually is from a cost perspective. There were, I think, 12 projects or 10 projects that had to go back to the city and ask for more money. That's ridiculous. We shouldn't be spending government money on that. We should be incentivizing that through the tax code.
No, 100%. And I think right now, I mean, cities, I think, are trying to get to a point where, so for example, in Mooresville, they have an affordability incentive that centers around density.
Right.
So if you have X percentage of your units that meet the AMI standard, you can get that same percentage in a density bonus. The problem is that the numbers don't pan out.
The numbers still don't pan out.
Still don't pan out on density because the cost of construction is so high.
That's right.
And so you don't get developers really taking advantage of those things. And a lot of times they'll pay the fee in lieu, right, so they can get the increased density and just not have to carry the AMI. And so I think one of the things that, and plus increased density always presents a political problem around here for a lot of, and so there's a hesitancy all around to use that type of incentive. So what you're talking about makes a ton of sense is that we have to provide the incentives that work in order to get the ultimate outcome that we're looking for. And it's very tough at the municipal level because a lot of times the toolbox is not as big as it is at, for example, at a state level.
Well, that's why, but that's why you got to do it at the state level so that everybody has access to the same toolbox. And furthermore, you and I know this, it's hard to get elected officials to want to vote for stuff that's necessary that may not necessarily be popular. Right. Cornelius was a good example. They just turned down an industrial flex park. They needed that. Huntersville turned down Burkdale. They needed that. You actually, it was funny. of all people in the world, Braxton Winston, God bless him, goes out there and says, if a city is not growing, it is dying. I completely agree. These communities have to continue to be growing. You know, that's a very liberal Democrat. I'm a very conservative Republican. But the two of us agree, and a lot of people agree. The problem is, as you well know, we've got these folks that moved here in the last 5 to 10 years who want to shut the door and pull up the ladder and say, no. This place is beautiful just as it is. I want it just for me. No, folks. This place was made great because we wanted you to be here. Mm-hmm. If you're not going to continue in that same vein, if you're not going to say that we want more people to come and experience this and we're going to find a way to make it work, all of a sudden, sooner or later, you're going to find that, oh, crap, we're not growing anymore. Then you have to spur that. Yeah. Then you have to spin the wheel back up. And it always costs money to do that.
Well, and to be fair, it's always interesting to me because it really is a paradox, right? People move in, you know, if you do not want to be in a growing area, there are numbers of places you can go.
Yes.
That you are pretty much assured, you know, basically just go a little past Raleigh.
That's
and
right.
you are assured you will never find growth there.
Or you go to Alexander County.
Or, Alexander County.
Alexander County. You're never going to have growth there.
No, never. And
sorry, folks. Sorry.
Well, and you know, it's far enough out. It's rural, and that's a lifestyle that people, and I embrace it, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the problem is you're not going to have multiple restaurants to choose from. You're not going to have multiple grocery stores to choose from. You're not going to have multiple shopping and movies and other entertainment areas in order to choose from, and the convenience that those bring if you do those. So you are going to have to make a trade-off. And what I find is people want those things, but don't want the growth required to have them. So that's one of the things that we have to really kind of figure out is and there's just no good way to message that.
No,
right? You can't stick that on a mailer in a commercial. There's no good way to message that.
Well, and that's the problem is that you're sitting here like, and everybody's on Facebook, right? So it becomes a contagion. Like this Facebook contagion where everybody's like, oh my goodness, how are we sitting here? Oh my God, it's so awful, this new thing, and it's all over, and all the moms get upset. It becomes this shrill pitch noise. And all of a sudden, what really needs to happen is everybody just needs to sit down and be like, it's really not that bad.
It's really not.
It really is not that bad. I promise you.
The sun will come up.
The sun will. I promise
you, it will come up.
You may have to wait a minute longer in the line to get to your left turn to get to the Harris Teeter right there on Catawba. But I promise you, you're still going to be able to get there.
Absolutely. And so, but I did want to bring this up because it was interesting. You know, Charlotte, obviously, still just the growth challenges and the redevelopment challenges in Charlotte are so different than anywhere else. And you know, it seems like the Charlotte City Council feels like that. You know, their city manager is doing a pretty good job. 4% raise for him.
He's going to get the same the county manager got. They can't; those two compete. They can't not be the same.
Really,
county manager got 4. City manager's going to have to get 4. That's how they do it down there.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I think it took him well above the $500,000 mark.
Oh yeah.
But I know that the county and city are also. I know there's discussions going on between the Panthers and the city of Charlotte about renovations to Bank of America Stadium. But not too long ago, I think it was the county that basically came back and said, "Yeah, you're not getting a dime out of us."
Yeah, that's typical Dina DiOrio. God bless her. You know, Dina DiOrio has kept our county taxes lower than all the rest of the surrounding counties. We've not had one tax increase in Mecklenburg County in almost 6 years.
Really?
Yeah, you could call this last one kind of sort of a tax increase because it didn't go exactly to revenue neutral, and they did that again in 19. But from 2018 to 2023, Dina DiOrio, with her leadership at the county, has not put forth a budget that actively calls for a serious tax increase, unlike Wake County, where they've had 5 years in a row of tax increases. Charlotte's the same. So I give him credit. I will tell you, I would not have given him a 4% raise given the issues we've had with cats, but that's a whole nother issue.
And just for the benefit of those listening who may not, and of course all of Representative Saine's listeners are highly educated in things like this, but in case we have a random person who just tuned in, why is it that Mecklenburg County could afford not to increase their taxes these last 6 years?
Yeah, that would be because of all of the revaluation and growth. That we've had.
The G word. The dreaded G word.
Awful G word.
You're listening to All Things Saine on WSIC News Radio. We will be right back.
There's more All Things Saine with NC Representative Jason Saine on the way from the new 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
always ready to help you make it fun to work outside. Little Shavers Woodshop stocks up on all your wood, treated lumber, wood fencing, and all the treatment items to keep them looking great. PVG, paints, and stains, and add in some pine needles and Daddy Pete's mulch and soils, and your landscaping will be the best around. Tools, supplies, and just about all you need is ready for you at Little Shavers. Head on over to Little Shavers, 3301 Salisbury Highway, right in between Statesville, Morrisville, and Moxville. Visit LittleshaversWoodshop.com. That's LILShaversWoodshop.com.
This is your weather update from the WSIC News Weather Center. It's going to be sunny and hot today with a high of 94 degrees, so make sure you're staying cool. As we head into the evening, partly cloudy skies with a low dropping to 70 before we head into Thursday, where we have chances for rain. This is your weather update from the WSIC News Weather Center.
Folks, you know Randy Marion sells vehicles the King of Price way, but did you know our service department? We service vehicles the King of Price way. We sell tires, we sell brakes, we sell batteries, we sell the maintenance. We help you keep your vehicle on the road safe, ready to drive. Whatever the season is, Randy Marion service departments have you covered. Come see us today because, folks, again, you know we sell the King of Price way and we do service the King of Price way.
King of Price, RandyMarionStatesville.com.
Ray Magliozzi here for eBay Motors. So you ordered a new air filter for your car. You try to install it, but it doesn't fit. So you take a little bit off the sides. What, still doesn't fit? Well, you could try to sit on it. Or get it right the first time with eBay Guaranteed Fit. When you see the check, you know that part's going to fit. Air filters, brakes, headlights, over 122 million parts. Get the right parts at the right prices. eBay Motors, let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
I was crossing the street when I met the love of my life. I chased after her. Nothing would stand in my way. Not the dog walker, nor the hot dog vendor. Finally reaching her, I asked, "What do you call that amazing smell?"
It's Gain Flings.
Gain Flings. My love had a name, but more importantly, it had a scent.
Fall in love with Gain Flings. Seriously good scent. Gain Flings with 50% more freshness ingredients versus leading bargain detergent.
Be a part of the conversation.
I listen on the way to work.
Have your say.
It's more than just opinions. It's facts.
This is WSIC News Talk Now.
Welcome back to All Things Saine on WSIC News Radio. You're listening to David Coble and Larry Shaheen filling in for Representative Jason Saine. If you'd like to be part of the show, 844-STUDIO-4. We are still streaming live on the WSIC News Facebook page, on YouTube, X, and LinkedIn. Man, it's just getting more and more complicated.
You got that better.
I'm just going to start saying Twitter.
Yes,
I'm just going to keep saying Twitter.
It's Twitter.
It is still Twitter.
Until Elon sends me a cease and desist. I'm going to call it
that.
Twitter.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
I'm still going to call it the tweets. But thanks. And so we're going to pick back up today. Larry, you had some really kind things to say about our governor earlier. And so, obviously big friend of yours. But in something that I know will cause you distress, Court of Appeals looks like that bar owner's lawsuit against him can move forward.
That's so great.
And so, and for those of you who are not familiar with sort of the lawsuit, sort of what's the basis and what are the bar owners suing for?
So now this is an interesting situation. So the bar owners sued, saying that the governor did not have the authority under any executive order that he had to shut them down, right? Without just compensation. Well, the judge dismissed that. They appealed it. That's an interlocutory appeal. So the suit doesn't go forward until that is heard. The Court of Appeals just ruled that the case can go forward, that they presented enough to survive a dismissal. So now it's divided, though. So it's going to go to the court. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court's going to have to rule. Likely the Supreme Court will rule that the case can continue. At that point, then we're talking about a condemnation lawsuit, which is essentially what it is, because you're talking about the condemnation of the bar business due to the pandemic and whether or not, because the governor shut their businesses down, they are due just compensation. I think that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Because personally, I believe, and everyone else I think on this station, and anyone else listening probably believes, that none of these places, hotels, restaurants, bars, should have ever been shut down, period. That they should have been able to decide for themselves how they do social distancing, that they should have never been stuck with the possible choice of what do we close or do we just go out of business because we don't have the money coming in to be able to pay people, or how do we do this? North Carolina had a unique solution with the ARPA funds where they put $500 million aside, and it's thanks to Representative Saine. And I want to make sure that the folks here are listening. Without Representative Saine, we would see hotels, bars, and restaurants in this state likely have gone out of business. And we would have likely seen a lot of those folks not be able to survive the run-up back to where we are now with hospitality spending, because that program, we're the only state that did that. And that's a lot of credit to not just Representative Saine, but the folks at the North Carolina Restaurant Lodging Association, Lynn Minges. Full disclosure on the interest here, my fiance, who's Isabel Hill Garcia, who's the lobbyist for that organization. Without them pushing, and without Representative Saine and the folks in the Senate buying into what Representative Saine was trying to do, the hospitality industry in this state would be fundamentally different than it is now. So this lawsuit is so vitally important because we cannot ever have a repeat of what happened during COVID. The governor does not have that power. He should never have had that power, and no one should have let him have that power. And if this lawsuit properly clarifies what he can and can't do during an emergency order, well, that's great. He wants to shut them down. He should have paid them for the losses they sustained out of government coffer.
Absolutely, no 100%. And I think, and I'm interested in your perspective of this as an attorney. So obviously, there, as you mentioned earlier, there's it basically de facto condemnation, right?
Yeah.
And without just compensation, illegal taking. And so what I'm curious about though is, does the arbitrary nature in which closings were enforced, both not nationally, but even in our state, and the arbitrary nature in which those, how does that play into this? And is that a factor that should be highlighted, or is it really just come down to the ability of the governor and ultimately property rights?
Well, it's a property rights issue. It's a property rights issue. It doesn't matter. The arbitrary nature in which they enforced it was, of course, ridiculous. But you can look at Ace Speedway and see what happened up there. For those of you on the show that don't know, Ace Speedway was shut down and they sued the governor, and their lawsuit's continuing. But they chose to reopen, so they actually had violations. But arbitrariness or not, it's a property rights issue, okay? The government shall not, it's in both the federal Constitution and it's in the North Carolina Constitution. You shall not be have property taken from you without just compensation, which means it's a very clear standard. So the fact that their businesses were essentially taken in what was at that time deemed an emergency, okay, give them a check. It's really that simple. You take it, you give them a check. The MAP Act lawsuit for inverse condemnation was done that way. We've proven this over time with property that's taken for roads. If you're going to take property for a public purpose, and the Kelo decision at the United States Supreme Court very clearly said that states do have that right, but it must be only through just compensation.
So let's play this out. It goes forward. Ultimately, after, I'm sure, a sea of appeals. I mean, for all intents and purposes, Governor Coble will likely out of office by the time that this probably comes into any kind of resolution. So let's say that finally it gets to the end of where it belongs, even if that's the United States Supreme Court. If it is found that compensation is owed, who pays it?
The state.
And so where does that,
the General Assembly is going to have to appropriate that money.
So it's not a situation where, because like in municipal government, for example, if lawsuits come through, there is an insurance.
There's no insurance on it. Well, it's going to really determine whether or not this gets to be a class action. If this turns into a class action type of issue where you're talking about every single bar owner is due compensation, man, you're talking about something.
That's a big number.
That's a big number. But here's the other thing, that consideration to draw into this. Who's the Attorney General at the time of this case? If it's Dan Bishop, does that mean that at that time we're going to be done? Because if I'm Dan Bishop, I'm campaigning on the fact that they're right. They're right. These people deserve compensation because we should never have shut them down. And if elected as Attorney General, I, Dan Bishop, will make sure that these things never happen again. I will sue the governor if he chooses to do this, no matter what party he comes from.
And then ultimately you're talking about just settling it.
Yeah, which they need to. They need to. These people had their lives stolen from them because the government, and none of it was true. At this point, we've pretty much determined that none of those things were necessary. But of course, God bless Washington. They, of course, promote Mandy Cohen right there to the CDC. So we're going to get that same nonsense coming back again. But it don't even start. It's one of those situations where you sit there and you're like, okay, that's how That's how it's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Other lawsuit going on, Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls has a lawsuit going on, which I actually really wasn't familiar with, but a lot of some free speech implications in on this one.
There are some free speech implications. So what has happened is that the Judicial Standards Commission has filed a complaint. There's been a complaint filed, and it's anonymous, so we don't know who filed it. But the Judicial Standards Commission is dealing with a complaint from someone against Anita Earls on some statements she made, both during some interviews as well as some statements she made from the bench that disparaged the court. Now, there's two issues here. The first is First Amendment rights. A judge does not check their First Amendment rights at the door. That's absolutely right. They walk out of court. They have the rights to say whatever they want. However, judges are held to a different standard. Those standards apply because you've decided you want to be a judge. So if those standards apply equally to everybody, you have to follow them. And if Anita Earls, God bless her, and this is the part where I always find funny. If this was a Republican, if the roles were switched, the Democrats would do this in a heartbeat. The Democrats would go after a Republican judge in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. So I have no sympathy for Justice Earls because Justice Earls, in my opinion, and I'm gonna have a strong opinion here.
You a strong opinion?
She's the most corrupt individual in North Carolina.
Wow.
She is the most corrupt elected official in North Carolina. And here's why. She took Eric Holder's money, then sat on the court and heard the case and decided in their favor. That's purchasing a justice for the purposes of ruling on a redistricting case. She should have recused herself, and she didn't. And she has brought shame and complete blemish to the North Carolina Supreme Court. She has served with nothing but dishonorability. I personally find her to be abhorrent. I personally think she is an absolutely terrible lawyer, and I personally think that the way she is conducting her business is a way that besmirches every lawyer in all of North Carolina. And I hope that she continues to do what she's doing because she's the one probably behind getting Mike Morgan to challenge Josh Stein in that primary. She's been the brain behind all of this super progressive left nonsense. And let's be clear, there's a group out of Arabella Advisors. They have an office in Durham. Her organization was funded by that group, okay, to sue our state consistently. That money that came from Arabella Advisors was funded from foreign actors. And the money that Eric Holder used to get her elected was funded by foreign actors. I don't mean people outside North Carolina. I mean people outside the country. And you can go search this. This is not all that difficult. I find her and the way she has conducted herself and her business to be the biggest example of non-exposed corruption in the history of this state.
That's obviously you spend a lot more time looking at this kind of stuff than I do. And a lot of passion around that. And as an attorney, obviously, anyone who has ever heard you talk about the law or heard you, talk about cases or talk about the laws in North Carolina, understand there's an underlying passion that you have and a respect that you have for it. So strong statements like that, obviously, to me, that says a lot about not just the passion, but also just the gravity of some of the things that you've seen in this.
And I have never in my life, and I mean, it doesn't just extend to her. I mean, you look at what happened with the redistricting cases last year, 2 years ago, how you had two folks appointed special master to draw districts in North Carolina who both donated to people who ultimately benefited from the maps they drew and then went around and campaigned for the people that they had rule in their favor. The whole thing 2 years ago in mine, and it's all over Twitter, so this is not something that I have not said. The whole thing was a corrupt act, and anyone from the Democratic side who took part in it, including those special masters and Anita Earls, the fact that there has been no investigation and no exposure of that corruption is just criminal.
Well, and and so it's like everybody's, it's fine.
It's fine. Move on. Josh Stein not doing his job again as usual.
It's all fine. It's all fine. But we're going to come back after the break, talk a little bit. There's a couple of bills coming through inside of the General Assembly, and also want to catch up with you on post-presidential debate. Last time that you and I were together, we talked a little bit about not just the debate, but also who we thought would come out well. So looking forward to getting your thoughts on that.
Absolutely.
You're listening to All Things Saine on WSIC News Radio. We'll be right back.
More of All Things Saine with NC Representative Jason Saine is coming up on the new 1059 100.7 WSIC.
Here's your WSIC community calendar. Looking for a night of laughs? This Saturday, Mike Goodwin, who's been on America's Got Talent, is coming to Kane Center for the Arts in Cornelius. Kane Center for the Arts' 2024 fall season, comedian Mike Goodwin. This Saturday, September 9th. For more info, visit kanearts.org. The Iredell County Agricultural Fair is going on right now. For $5 until September 9th, enjoy thrills and yummy treats going on at the Iredell County Fairgrounds in Troutman. The Iredell County Agricultural Fair runs through this Saturday. Apple picking at Kerrigan Farms is here. The apple picking at Kerrigan Farms is a very short window. Apple picking will end September 30th. Only in September. Book your experience now at kerriganfarms.com. The Full Bloom Film Festival is happening this week, September 7th, 8th, and 9th in Statesville. Happening on Meeting Street in downtown Statesville, the Full Bloom Film Festival features diverse quality cinema. Where I Belong, the documentary about the life of Statesville's own Rocky Lynn, will play twice. For more info, visit fullbloomfilmfestival.org. Lost Worlds Brewing is hosting their 3rd annual Harvest Market. Celebrate autumn on Sunday during the Harvest Market with tasty beer, food, and live music. This is happening at Lost Worlds Brewing in Cornelius. Harvest Market is from 11 a.m. until 4 p.m. Sunday at Lost Worlds Brewing. For more info, visit lostworldsbeer.com. Have an event you would like to tell people about? Yard sales, estate sales, and everything in between? Visit WSICnews.com and click on events to submit your event today.
This is your weather update from the WSIC News Weather Center. It's going to be sunny and hot today with a high of 94 degrees, so make sure you're staying cool. As we head into the evening, partly cloudy skies with a low dropping to 70 before we head into Thursday, where we have chances for rain. This is your weather update from the WSIC News Weather Center.
Quality Car Care at 2040 Old Mountain Road is your local Toyota specialist and a licensed NC inspection station. View their pre-owned inventory at QualityCarCareStatesville.com. 704-902-7678.
76 years strong, and we're still the one. WSIC. News. Talk. Now.
Oh, look at you. Yeah.
The smooth, dulcet tones
I
of
can
All
just
Things
see
Saine.
Saine up here in his chain, sits back with a little glass of bourbon.
Enjoying himself.
Enjoying himself. God, he's got it sweet here,
It
man.
is. This is a fantastic studio. Studio C, and the C is for Coble, if anybody asks. Welcome back to All Things Saine here on WSIC News Radio. We are with Larry Shaheen, David Coble filling in for Representative Jason Saine. Still streaming live on the WSIC News Facebook page, on X, on LinkedIn, and hopefully still on YouTube. Larry, a couple of quick hits items as we kind of go out. Noticed an article earlier today about North Carolina test scores still being below pre-COVID scores. So, in your mind, what's the gap here? Why aren't we closing on this?
The reason is because, I mean, let's just take what happened with this most recent hurricane, right? You know, Wake County happened to let schools out because of the hurricane. It was the most beautiful day in all of North Carolina. Now, of course, if it had been bad, everyone would have said, oh, good, I'm glad we canceled. But every single school district is trying to find every single way they can to get out of school. You want to know why? Because they want to keep pushing the year as far past December and January as they can. And why is that? School calendar. Again, I think it's interesting to see that the teachers don't want to get in there and teach. I think the number, when I last looked, you want to know the number of full weeks, the first semester. You want to know the number of full weeks that people are in school for?
How many?
It's like 5.
Really?
5. Okay. If we're serious about getting proficiency back to where it was, if we're serious about teaching these kids, with all due respect to the teachers, Y'all need to just get in that school every day. Every single day that you can possibly get in there, and you need to focus on those kids. Let's not focus on LGBTQ agendas. Let's not focus on social issues. Let's not focus on woke nonsense. Let's get in there and teach them reading, writing, arithmetic. Let's get back to what it is that this state was great for. I'll give you a good example. 2012, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools won the Broad Prize. Best school district, urban school district in the country. Now, the proficiency scores specifically for African Americans are in the tank. All of them are below 50. There's not a single school, except for maybe Huff, Providence, Ardrey Kell, Myers Park, and maybe a few others, that are seriously at grade level proficiency. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And the problem is that it's not just there. You can see it in Wake. You can see it in Guilford. You can see it in Cumberland. You can see it in every county where they focused on keeping those doors closed. They denied those students their constitutional right to an education. It is criminal, in my mind, that these teachers have not been held accountable for their activism, and that the teachers union in this state, NCAE, has not been sued for advocating for the learning loss. They did, because they for years, learning loss is a fiction. It doesn't really exist. That's bull. That is bunk. We all know that's bunk. The fact that they advocated for school closures is crazy. And the thing that triggered me the most just this last couple of weeks, they're shutting schools down because of the ventilation systems and lack of HVAC. Didn't we have to pass a bill in January of 2021 that dealt with money for schools? Where'd that money go? I mean, Pete Callender pointed that out on WBT, going to give him credit for that. But I mean, they're lying to us. And that's the problem, is that we can't trust our school system. And to a certain extent, controversial opinion, it's time to have a discussion about taking away control of education from local school boards. Local school boards are not properly educating our kids. They've failed. So it's time to start talking about breaking up these school districts.
And that's an issue. And so it's interesting to think about that, because prime example is my kids have grown up in the Mooresville Graded School District, and
one of the best school districts
one of the best school districts in the country, and Iredell Statesville's not, right there in is another good school system. But for years, when I first got to Mooresville, there was still talk and fights about merging those districts. Why are there two districts inside the same county? Why does Mooresville have its own school system as opposed to being merged in with everybody? And I still remember being at events and things like that, where if that conversation came up, it was North versus South time in those types of things. Passionate love for the school districts, in Mooresville Graded School District, and there has always been a fight. Former county commissioner and county chairwoman Sarah Hare Tice, basically drew the line in the sand and said, from my cold dead hand, will you merge these school systems? Exactly, and that has been, and to me, I have always been an advocate of smaller school districts, not bigger, because the local school boards that are in the smaller districts, they're closer to the kids, they're closer to the parents. They have the ability to adapt to the needs of their community. And these ginormous school systems like Charlotte-Mecklenburg, there is absolutely no way in the world any school board could effectively ensure to meet the needs of kids as big as that school district is. Or any
administrator. I'm not sure that any administrator can properly manage a district as large as Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Or Wake well. To a certain extent, there has got to be some kind, and again, there has to be accountability, right? Teachers who don't show that they're getting their kids to grade level, those teachers need to be fired. I'm sorry. If you're not doing the job, you're not supposed to be there, and we will hire someone who wants to do it. Now, here's the deal that I would make with the schools if they would be willing to take it. I would legitimately sit there and say, we will raise your pay 50% now, and then tie it to inflation. But here's the deal. Principals get to hire and fire. And it's immediate. There's no such thing as, no. Principals get to hire and fire. Or we go to a system where the school districts are smaller, and the school districts are going to be governed like in South Carolina. Richland County has 5 different school districts just in Richland County, which is Columbia, South Carolina. You look at, all the different school districts in all these other places, they're smaller. They're smaller, they're closer to the people, they're better. Make a deal with the school systems where we're going to get you to the pay level you want, okay? But we're going to get what we want, which is you're going to go back to being accountable. We're going to get rid of this nonsense that you're teaching in the school systems, and we're going to get back to the basics, because a classical education, why are we talking about sex in elementary school? Why are we having conversations with kids about what these children want to do or don't want to do with their bodies? And why, God forbid, are we trying to keep secrets from parents? Any parent or any adult with a kid who's not their own that advocates for that child to keep something from their parents is someone I never, ever, ever want around kids, period.
No, 100%. And I think it's, and what's great is, the General Assembly here has taken that.
They've been
they've been so good, aggressive on it, have passed bills, overridden vetoes on that.
Yep.
And so thank goodness
God.
for that. But when we look, obviously Charlotte Mecklenburg looking at a school bond.
Yep.
And so, from a test score standpoint, and then one of the things you mentioned to me during the break was former Mayor Pat McCrory sort of injected himself into the school bond discussion.
Well, he injected himself into the school bond discussion by kind of unnecessarily trashing the consultants. I mean, I got to tell you, Pat's one of the greatest public servants we've ever had in this region, and there's no doubt about that. But sometimes Pat likes to stir the pot. And you know something? It's going to be tough enough to win this school bond this year. Now, do I think that we do need the school bond? Yeah, probably we do. Am I happy with CMS? No, I'm really not. But the people they've hired, Morgan Jackson and Nexus Strategies on the Democratic side, and Jim Blaine and Ray Martin, the differentiators on the Republican side, along with a local group. These are some of the sharpest minds, period, in all of North Carolina. And to come after them the way he did about this article that just got published on PPP is completely unnecessary. Not only is it completely unnecessary, it borders on slander, because you're basically accusing them of a crime. And the newspaper basically said, yeah, it's legal for them to take this. And that's the thing. It's like, that's unnecessary. Like, this is the kind of thing where it's like, you got Pat's number one issue as governor was learning to pick his battles, right? He didn't need to say that.
Yeah.
Not only did he not need to say that, he didn't need to interject himself, because the school bonds is going to be decided by people voting this year in November. It's a group that's usually always supported school bonds. I anticipate they're going to support school bonds, but it's the kind of unnecessary injection that makes people think that he's still got a personal beef.
Yeah.
And it just came off as it just came off as still bitter.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with the time we have left, though, I do want to revisit real quick. You and I talked Republican presidential politics last time. We talked about the debates and the stage. You watched the presidential debate from a couple of weeks ago. Do you think our predictions held true on that? Do you think our sort of feeling on that did based off what you saw on stage?
I think so. But I mean, to a certain extent, I was
Well,
surprised
it would be completely illogical to think we'd have been wrong.
No,
it was more rhetorical than anything.
Right. But here's the thing. Trump didn't show up.
Yeah.
So we actually got to talk about policy. And again, everybody listening to the show who's listened to me before or followed me in any way, shape, or form, I am the most conservative person that I think that exists. But I find myself to the middle of my own party because I refuse to support Donald Trump. And the issue continues to be that I support the concept of I want the most conservative person nominated who can get elected.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I will tell you, Nikki Haley came across really well. Ron DeSantis came across really well. Tim Scott always comes across well. I just don't think it's his time yet. I just don't think he's quite ready. And then ultimately, the thing that's going to really make the difference is going to come down to we're about to see some trials.
Right.
We're about to see some trials. If Trump's convicted, that's going to be rough for him.
Yeah, absolutely. But will be interesting to see. But no, it was just interesting your thoughts because, like, I agree with your take wholeheartedly about the debate. I thought Nikki Haley availed herself well. Like Tim Scott a lot. Agree again. Just not his time. I did see an interesting comment about Vivek Ramaswamy. Said that basically if you wanted the I guess the charisma of Barack Obama with the policy depth of Donald Trump, that he's your guy.
I don't even pay attention to him at this point.
Thanks for being on the show, Larry. All Things Saine. Hopefully, Representative Saine will be back next week. Everyone have a great week.
The new 105.9, 100.7 WSIC, Statesville.